pena volverá. Triste pena, ya déjalo ya.
Hey, San Antonio, just getting back from the border. We've been down there trying to get a solution on this declaration by the president as far as, labeling our people, what they've been saying for, I think when they got here, I mean, this is getting to be to where at least it's fruitating, and we're asking the president to meet with our tribes on a resolution there on this border. But with what happened there at El Paso and what I thought it was vital for me to come back because I was hearing a lot of stuff, and I want you to listen to this.
Right now, we have to decide what kind of nation we're going to become. The attack that we saw in El Paso 2 days ago was the result of hate and bigotry. For 4 years now, since he launched his campaign, Donald Trump has made hate and bigotry and division a political strategy.
And the people in Washington, D.C. have to show the courage and the power of those people in that store and our first responders and the immigrants in our communities. Mitch McConnell, Senator McConnell, has to call up that gun legislation for a vote. We have waited for too long to get that done.
We don't need thoughts and prayers out of Washington. What we need is strength and some resolve that we haven't seen yet. The fact of the matter is there's an escalating acts are not madness. They are driven by hate. And they are a hatred that we have to confront and rip it out by its roots.
We have a president who works overtime trying to divide the American people based on the color of our skin or where we were born or the language that we speak. Together, we are going to undo the damage that Trump has caused and bring our nation back together again.
And when this is all over and this moment passes, we will remember that we were the ones who fought for the best of who this country is, and we were the ones who made real those promises that were articulated when we wrote the Constitution of the United States and all of its amendments and the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights and those words that we spoke in 1776, that we are all equal and should be treated that way.
The plague of mass shootings in the country has now reached an almost incomprehensible moment. Twice now in less than 24 hours, we've seen massacres in 2 American cities with a death toll in the dozens.
That truth is we have not just a gun epidemic in this country, but we have a hate epidemic in this country.
There's a toxic brew right now in the United States, and this is just one more example of that, of white nationalism. This president started his campaign in 2016 on a path of racial resentment and fanning the flames of bigotry.
We are all responsible to each other in this country. We have moral bonds and fabric of our country. We have a president of the United States who is particularly responsible. I, in my faith, have this idea that you reap what you sow, and he is sowing seeds of hatred in our country, and this harvest of hate violence that we're seeing right now lies at his feet. He is responsible. He's responsible when he has taken no action whatsoever to even condemn white supremacy.
We've moved straight past any sympathy at all for the victim, straight past going into what caused this and trying to figure out who's to blame. So I'll ask this question. Was Bernie Sanders responsible for when my friends got shot playing baseball? I don't think that he was.
You don't accept the fact that the president's rhetoric has been a contributing factor at all?
I blame the people who pulled the trigger, Chuck. Goodness gracious, is someone really blaming the president? These people are sick.
We have children in El Paso right now, right, who've just witnessed their family members, their friends, shot down because somebody thinks there's a Hispanic invasion of the country, which is almost the exact same language of the President of the United States.
Now, these people are what I've advocated with you, what they did to my son, and now they're trying to steer away from it. They want to bring guns. Even here in San Antonio, this District 8 councilman, he's lying. He's trying to say it's guns. When his mother, and this is where you can call him, this District 8 councilman, his mother runs the San Antonio Battered Women's Shelter. And we said when we were down in Corpus Christi, when the governor gave this money for this new court for this family violence, and I think they started a new one here, if you're having that high rate of homicide there with your San Antonio, let's look at where those, as to what we said, those are those coming out, not functional. And there's no resource here because they don't want to accept this liability of making these people, on what I showed you in the last show, what happened at the jail, and what Sheriff Salazar is saying, we got a problem here, and I'm going to need somebody else to step up here. Well, you know, if you're making these people to where they're not functional, I think I showed you Denton, Texas, the kid cut off his mother's head. 2009, when they did this to my son, the little boy killed his father. We went to Judge Jarrett. All this is happening. Now it's frustrating where they're not going to be able to run from this as long as we the people stand up as to our community safety. They're elected officials, and you know what happened, not just, this is the good thing about this is not just happening here. So it's not like they can cover it up because it's just Texas. It's not just Texas. It's what Parmelo said in 90% of the jails as far as what she did with their crisis intervention training. Let me let you watch this.
Good morning. My fellow Americans, this morning, our nation is overcome with shock, horror, and sorrow. This weekend, more than 80 people were killed or wounded in two evil attacks. One Saturday morning in El Paso, Texas, a wicked man went to a Walmart store where families were shopping with their loved ones. He shot and murdered 20 people and injured 26 others, including precious little children. Then, in the early hours of Sunday morning, Dayton, Ohio, another twisted monster opened fire on a crowded downtown street. He murdered 9 people, including his own sister, and injured 27 others. The First Lady and I join all Americans in praying and grieving for the victims, their families, and the survivors. We will stand by their side forever. We will never forget. These barbaric slaughters are an assault upon our communities, an attack upon our nation, and a crime against all of humanity. We are outraged and sickened by this monstrous evil, the cruelty, the hatred, the malice, the bloodshed, and the terror. Our hearts are shattered for every family whose parents, children, husbands, and wives were ripped from their arms and their lives. America weeps for the fallen. We are a loving nation, and our children are entitled to grow up in a just, peaceful, and loving society. Together, we lock arms to shoulder the grief. We ask God in heaven to ease the anguish of those who suffer, and we vow to act with urgent resolve. I want to thank the many law enforcement personnel who responded to these atrocities with the extraordinary grace and courage of American heroes. I have spoken with Texas Governor Greg Abbott and Ohio Governor Mike DeWine, as well as Mayor DeMargo of El Paso, Texas, and Mayor Nan Whaley of Dayton, Ohio, to express our profound sadness and unfailing support. Today, we also send the condolences of our nation to President Obrador of Mexico and all the people of Mexico for the loss of their citizens in the El Paso shooting. Terrible, terrible thing. I have also been in close contact with Attorney General Barr and FBI Director Wray. Federal authorities are on the ground, and I have directed them to provide any and all assistance required, whatever is needed. The shooter in El Paso posted a manifesto online consumed by racist hate. In one voice, our nation must condemn racism, bigotry, and white supremacy. These sinister ideologies must be defeated. Hate has no place in America. Hatred warps the mind, ravages the heart, and devours the soul. We have asked the FBI to identify all further resources they need to investigate and disrupt hate crimes and domestic terrorism, whatever they need. We must recognize that the internet has provided a dangerous avenue to radicalize disturbed minds and perform demented acts. We must shine light on the dark recesses of the internet and stop mass murders before they start. The internet, likewise, is used for human trafficking, illegal drug distribution, and so many other heinous crimes. The perils of the internet and social media cannot be ignored, and they will not be ignored. In the 2 decades since Columbine, our nation has watched with rising horror and dread as one mass shooting has followed another, over and over again, decade after decade. We cannot allow ourselves to feel powerless. We can and will stop this evil contagion. In that task, we must honor the sacred memory of those we have lost by acting as one people. Open wounds cannot heal if we are divided. We must seek real bipartisan solutions. We have to do that in a bipartisan manner that will truly make America safer and better for all. First, we must do a better job of identifying and acting on early warning signs. I am directing the Department of Justice to work in partnership with local, state, and federal agencies, as well as social media companies, to develop tools that can detect mass shooters before they strike. As an example, the monster in the Parkland High School in Florida had many red flags against him, and yet nobody took decisive action. Nobody did anything. Why not? Second, we must stop the glorification of violence in our society. This includes the gruesome and grisly video games that are now commonplace. It is too easy today for troubled youth to surround themselves with a culture that celebrates violence. We must stop or substantially reduce this, and it has to begin immediately. Cultural change is hard, but each of us can choose to build a culture that celebrates the inherent worth and dignity of every human life. That's what we have to do. Third, we must reform our mental health laws to better identify mentally disturbed individuals who may commit acts of violence and make sure those people not only get treatment, but when necessary, involuntary confinement. Mental illness and hatred pulls the trigger, not the gun. Fourth, we must make sure that those judged to pose a grave risk to public safety do not have access to firearms, and that if they do, those firearms can be taken through rapid due process. That is why I have called for red flag laws, also known as extreme risk protection orders. Today, I'm also directing the Department of Justice to propose legislation ensuring that those who commit hate crimes and mass murders face the death penalty, and that this capital punishment be delivered quickly, decisively, and without years of needless delay. These are just a few of the areas of cooperation that we can pursue. I am open and ready to listen and discuss all ideas that will actually work and make a very big difference. Republicans and Democrats have proven that we can join together in a bipartisan fashion to address this plague. Last year, we enacted the Stop School Violence and Fix NICS Acts into law, providing grants to improve school safety and strengthening critical background checks for firearm purchases. At my direction, the Department of Justice banned bump stocks. Last year, we prosecuted a record number of firearms offenses. But there is so much more that we have to do. Now is the time to set destructive partisanship aside, so destructive, and find the courage to answer hatred with unity, devotion, and love. Our future is in our control. America will rise to the challenge. We will always have, and we always will, win. The choice is ours, and ours alone. It is not up to mentally ill monsters. It is up to us. If we are able to pass great legislation after all of these years, we will ensure that those who were attacked will not have died in vain. May God bless the memory of those who perished in Toledo. And may God protect them. May God protect all of those from Texas to Ohio. May God bless the victims and their families. May God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now you have 80 people. As far as there and what we did with our veterans, I remember the 22. I go on YouTube, the ESP project, Building America's Future. That showed in that YouTube channel 22 veterans taking their own lives, and we said then that they were Christian men. That's their moral standard of this society and the fabric of what even the president said. It's not, this is the judicial, and it's broken. And this is what not we said, but they're saying. So now to uphold those people, you have to call those representatives. And we lost 22 people in El Paso, and we lost all those people in Ohio, and we still don't have anyone having a town hall on what we try to do for our veterans that were being put on these psychotropic drugs. Still to this very, very day, the city leadership, like I told you, this guy's mother runs this San Antonio battered women's shelter where the homicide rate's going up. And it's going to continue going up if you don't get to the point of matter on those men, like our veterans, not being functional because of this adverse effect of what we did with remember the 22 in 2012. And what we said, we covered this hearing here in San Antonio for the Adam Lance shooter, what they're trying to cover up with the opioids. That's what we just addressed on the border. They're saying it was 5 million tons of illicit drugs, but it didn't compare to the 500 million tons they're giving indigent single-parent American mothers, children, to control them. That's what Whitmire's office said when we talked to that Lawrence Coleman on that riot in Giddings State School. And this is what we try to do with the president's wife, Miss Melania, First Lady Melania Trump, did the Be Best initiative. And we did the Be Best initiative, Be Best for Indigent American Children. It's on YouTube, Be Best for Indigent American Children, to tell you how we can make a change. So this is what's being identified in Texas. This is what Bush said.
In the 48 hours since the El Paso massacre, politicians have suggested all kinds of reasons for what led up to it. Political reporter Jason Whiteley is joining us now. And Texas Republicans seem especially torn.
Chris, it's a good point. You know, right now, for the first time, Texas Republicans, some of them at least, really seem to be calling this out, saying that white supremacy led to the El Paso massacre. We got a lot of the email statements today, but some Republicans went straight to Twitter, specifically Texas Land Commissioner George P. Bush, the grandson of one Bush president and the nephew to the other. Here's what George P. wrote. I believe fighting terrorism remains a national priority, he said, and that should include standing firm against white terrorism here in the U.S. There have now been multiple attacks from self-declared white terrorists here in the U.S. in the last several months. This is a real threat and present threat that we must all denounce and defeat. Not long after, U.S. Senator Ted Cruz added this. As the son of a Cuban immigrant, I am deeply horrified by the hateful anti-Hispanic bigotry expressed in the shooter's so-called manifesto. This ignorant racism is repulsive and profoundly anti-American. We must speak clearly, he said, to combat evil in any form it takes. But neither Bush nor Cruz said anything critical about President Trump's rhetoric that Democrats said likely fueled the shooter's motive. Remember, last night at 10 and just a few moments ago in Tanya's story there, we told you the shooter said his attack was because of what he saw as a Hispanic invasion of Texas. We did a search of tweets and it found out that President Trump used the word invasion at least a half dozen times in the last year or so when referring to immigrants at the southern border. But here's what the president said when speaking to reporters this afternoon.
I just want to say that these are two incredible places. We love the people. Hate has no place in our country, and we're going to take care of it.
The gun problem, what are you going to do about it?
But we've done actually a lot, but perhaps more has to be done. But this is also a mental illness problem. If you look at both of these cases, this is mental illness. These are really people that are very, very seriously mentally ill.
Texas Republican Governor Greg Abbott also used mental health as a talking point when referring to the El Paso massacre. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick said video games is likely one of the contributing factors as well. But Democrats are blasting the president, saying his divisive rhetoric, that is what they say led the shooter to target Hispanics in El Paso yesterday.
Well, you know, we could talk about it till we're blue in the face, but we need a plan of action to keep another mass shooting from happening in this country.
How many times have we talked about that? You know, we've discussed that many times, like you said a moment ago too, Chris. You know, politically, the big question is what happens next? Late this evening, about an hour ago, the NRA finally issued a statement saying that it would work in good faith to pursue real solutions. What has not emerged tonight is any real legislative solution, a new legislative solution, or hope that an existing one might really have a path forward. But the president speaks tomorrow at 9 a.m. Dallas time. Perhaps there will be some news in that.
Yeah, we know the Trump administration did ban the use of bump stocks just a couple months ago.
After Las Vegas, exactly.
Right, after the Las Vegas. And we'll have to see. There is that bill that's sitting in the House right now that would extend the waiting time, I think, from 3 to 7 days on the background, 3 to 10 days on the background checks.
There's talk about the banning the high capacity magazines, reenacting the assault weapons ban. There's a lot of things out there, but nothing really has any traction right now in Congress. Whether that changes after this is something we'll have to watch and see.
And this shooting brings up a whole new concern for immigrants in this country. Here's Rebecca Lopez.
This man said this, and what we have said throughout legislation, when we did the Parents' Bill of Rights back in 2007 with Senator Hinojosa, when they were molesting the kids. It was then the Texas Youth Commission. Then we're back in the finance hearings, it's not just to molest the kids, but with the bill, Senate Bill 10, House Bill 3703, even the Compassionate Use Act for the medical marijuana. Now we're spending monies here in San Antonio. The county's going to give money so they can test hemp as to whether medical marijuana. Make it legal so we can start spending the money on what you did with the adverse effects of what these psychotropics are doing to our society that the president said. And this is a shocking part about it. We got all these other people telling these lies, or I don't even want to call them lies. That's their values of what you just heard what they all said, but none of them reference to what we need as a society to come to and what the judge said back in 2015. Making these members not functional is what we said about the 22 veterans being Christian, and what we said as far as the wife asking for a divorce. He can't go against God's will because he believes you get married until death do you part. And, you know, we as Native people have always tried to say that the left wing and the right wing are still just one bird. And, you know, we've had a vision of the eagle meeting the condor and here on the border, not just here on the southern border. And what our proposal is, and our partnerships on taking our remedies to the southern border of Mexico and creating these stabilization centers, being a mentoring housing program. But if we don't work at coming together right now, America is going to do as what we have said for over 500 years, and what's frustrated, and the only one that's saying anything is President Donald Trump. As far as this is a mental health crisis. And my son's part of the imprisonment of this process for profit. And it's been privatized. They're trying to privatize everything here. They got all these 501c3s that say they're going to help. They're all there. They're doing the kids, Clarity, Board at the Ball, 5-in-1, the Center for Healthcare Services. How are these drugs altering children's minds? I'm asking you to come together, call these people, and ask them, is this what we're doing to our children? So let's share as far as, you know, I keep thinking about back in the day and what keeps me on my path here for the children as to why I ran back in the cover-up of what they did in that report Closer to Home. And I'm contemplating doing what I have to do again. So please, let's all come together. And that only love is going to conquer this evil.